All right, I think we're ready to start. Victoria, very lovely to see you again. How's it going?
Nice. Hey Ryan, how are you doing?
We're doing okay between house moves, toddlers, job market that's insane. We're hanging in there as best we can. How about you?
Yeah, same. Couple of twins lying around, busy schedules, but also loads of really cool stuff going on actually in the market right now. So a busy but exciting client schedule, I have to say. So yeah, all good. But looking forward to a little rest over Easter, that's for sure.
Outstanding. Well, let's dive into it because we've got a few people joining us already. And
Cool.
what we'll do today is talk through what you and I are seeing within the, executive job market. And, throughout this process, if anybody has any questions, they'd like to jump in with any comments, queries, we're happy to field them. This is going to be just an open, kind of relaxed conversation where hopefully we can share some knowledge that'll help people get through this challenging job market, shall we say.
Isn't it just? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, the whole thing, when I first wanted to kick this conversation off with you, I was looking at the BDO Employer Index and basically what it was saying without getting into a long-winded, boring academic paper. Hiring intentions and vacancies in the UK are at an all-time low. We're seeing fewer live roles. We're seeing longer timelines, more competition for fewer seats at the top. So, I mean, what are you seeing on your end? Because I know you do a lot of work with executive level clients.
Absolutely. And kind of mirroring that as a result of those things, I am seeing quite a lot of anxiety about this. I'm seeing searches taking a lot longer. Actually, I'm seeing multi-step interviews. One of my clients had, I think, 17 rounds recently, which was insane. And actually, as a result of all of this, quite a lot of self-doubt creeping in. I'm having a lot of clients coming to me saying, actually, am I good enough for any of this? What's really going on? So I'm certainly seeing loads of stuff like that. But on top of that, we are executives in what's really kind of fast moving dynamic environments. We're not really made or used to uncertainty, but also going slow.
Yeah.
That's not really what we do. So I think that drives again that need of like, oh, well, this should be moving quicker, when we're actually used to doing that in our day to day anyway. The thing I will say though is I am seeing internal movement. So I'm seeing succession conversations happening quietly really well. So I work a lot with the internal teams. We talk lots about succession and critical pipelining. So a lot of that stuff is definitely going on, just even while the external market is a little bit quiet.
100%. And God, I mean, I thought my record for a client was bad. One of mine had 14 rounds of interviews, and that was with NVIDIA, right when their stock was just like going to the moon, and she still didn't get it.
Yeah.
Really
And that is soul crushing, right? And the amount of effort, time, like psychological space you give these things as well. I'm not sure how fair that is, if I'm honest with you. I don't know what you think about that. I'm not sure how fair it is. And also, how much internal time is this taking, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's like it gets to the point where what's efficient, right? What's going to be cost effective, and these long drawn out, life cycles for the candidate. As you said, it can be soul crushing, and on top of that as well, I think you made a great point about speed because, when I talk to my clients, whether they're at the executive level or somebody at the start of their career, and maybe they're out of work, made redundant, something.
Yeah.
And it's like they're sitting at home and it's like, I got to do something. I have to do something. And their first, port of call is usually, I'm going to go on LinkedIn and bang out applications, right?
Yeah.
Just click bang, and get out, hey, I got out 50 applications this week.
Yeah.
Well, that's a recipe for 50 rejections.
Yeah. And actually really quick rejection. So again, I spoke to a client early doors this week, and he was just like, I feel a bit behind. So some stuff had been happening. He's got a new baby at home. Like he had to go attend a family wedding in the middle of the week. Just loads of things were slowing him down. And his first reaction was, I am just going to bang out some applications here. And he was like, I just needed to do it. It's made me feel better. We had a whole conversation about, okay, it might make you feel better, but what happened as a result of that? And actually, what are the other things that you could or should be doing here that will boost confidence? And it's not that, is it? It's talking to people.
100%. And, I'm all about the rule of threes. No more than 3 applications a day. And I want 3 outreaches.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't necessarily just have to be on LinkedIn. It could be somebody you call, text, go have a coffee with.
Yeah.
Right. You go to an industry event, you bump into somebody, go have a pint afterwards.
Yeah.
That more hiring is happening in those situations than what we're seeing, at least, I think between you and I within the digital space, because it's convenient. Anybody can apply for any job anywhere. But, another piece of feedback I'm getting from my network of recruiters, headhunters, hiring managers is that they're putting more focus on doing their own search.
Yeah.
Right. Just posting a job on LinkedIn, if it pays over 100 grand and it's even like, hybrid or, fully remote, they're going to get 1,000 applicants.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, nobody's going to go through all of them. Just it's unrealistic. I know some companies say they do, and more power to them if that is the case.
Sure.
But in reality's sake, they're not getting through all of them.
No.
Right. So at the top of the pyramid, it's almost always going to be referrals. At the top of the pyramid, it's internal candidates.
Yeah.
As you rightly said before, about more internal movement happening. Then it's referrals. And then there's everybody else. And sorry, everybody else is just trying to buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think either of us are in the business of gambling with this stuff.
No, not at all. And I think, so 2 things have just popped into my mind. You talk about your rules of 3. I talk about 70, 20, 10. So what am I doing in a job search? Well, 70% of your time should be spent networking, talking to human beings, right? So that could be classed as a really strategic conversation with someone in your network that you have to prepare for, or it could just be a coffee with a friend where you kind of start to talk a little bit about, this is what I'm motivated by right now. This is what I think my strengths are. This is the sort of thing I'm looking for. It all counts, human connection. So that's the 70%. The 20% should be like preparing for those conversations, just spending a little bit of quiet time thinking about what are, maybe some of my proudest moments. What are the things that actually I'd want people to know about me? Just so you can really reinforce your reputation and just some of those things when you're talking. And then only 10% of your time should be spent applying. Most people come to me, even at the most senior levels, and they just go, oh, I've been doing it the other way around. Yeah. And so that is something that we really have to flip in people's mindsets, to be honest with you. So I don't know whether you see that whole networking piece as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, whenever I start a new conversation with the client, I tell them I can almost guarantee you will find this next role through somebody somebody I know, somebody within our shared network. Yeah. Very rarely, this was a little bit more common, like when we were coming out of the pandemic. But yeah, you could apply for a job and you probably have a decent shot because there were just so many roles out there because interest rates were low, venture capital money flooding in. Everybody's got money for headcount until they don't. And now we're kind of in the cycle we're in now, which is a good segue to our kind of next round of the conversation, which, a little bit of myth busting.
Let's do it.
Or, at least what we see as far as executives, what they might get wrong in the process.
Sure. So Ryan, start with CVs. What should somebody's CV actually look like? So this is the question, okay, I've been in business for 20 years. I have done some great things I'm really proud of. Too much to fit on 2 bits of paper. What should I be doing?
Well, the first thing I tell them is sometimes you have to murder your darlings. That's a, piece of advice one of my writing teachers gave me a long time ago. You might think a piece of information from 20, 25 years ago is so important to your narrative, whereas nowadays hiring managers typically are only focused on the last 5 to 10 years of your experience. Right? I mean, yes, the accumulation of your experience counts towards something in, that equation. However, focusing on things that were happening in the 80s and 90s, and as a 90s kid, that breaks my heart, but at the same time it's like, what have you done for me lately? That's the thing I try to get people to focus on, and that allows us to kind of skim some of that content from earlier in our career. So we take a 4-page monster and turn it into a nice tight 2-page document around 1,000 words, because even at the C-suite, people still zip through these things.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. How does that speak to kind of, lots of people talk to me about age discrimination and some of these other things and I presume from a CV perspective that actually helps?
It's a tough one, right? Because I mean, age discrimination is a real thing. It's happening. So we play the game with the rules they give us, right? So if I'm having to go through the, typical route of an application, whether I have a referral or not, it's going to go through some type of applicant tracking system software. And everybody thinks right now that, oh, applicant tracking systems are AI and AI is deciding who's getting the interview and who's not. Applicant tracking systems are just a filtering tool. I think that's a big misconception, that people think that the ATS is deciding things.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think there's a real blur in the market, particularly, executives level as well. Speak to me like, what is this thing? And we talk about it, and should I be fearful of it? How do I play the game? And you mentioned the point there. I talk to my clients all the time about, we need to level up. Like I can share the rules of this game with you, and we've got to work out how we play so we can level up. That's a lot of the narrative that I work with, actually. So that things to me.
100%. And I mean, when it comes to, okay, again, playing the game, so to speak, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I mean, unless this is a C-suite or senior executive position like managing director, VP, something like that, then I'm comfortable going back as far as 20 years, maybe 25, if that information is relevant and, it's still tying into what these folks are doing. Now, if you're somebody in software or product management or stuff like that, what was, hip, in vogue, whatever, I'm dating myself with those references, that might not even be relevant.
Might not even exist anymore. Right?
I mean, technology changes so quick on a dime. And, if you're talking about stuff you did in like DOS or, one of the old Apple Mac ones or whatever it was called, the green screen and whatnot, it's like, well, you're not as relevant. So it kind of does two things. One, it strips down the CV, gets us to 2 pages if we just focus on that 20 years. And then we put ourselves at less risk of having to deal with things like age discrimination. Because I mean, it's not somebody like a recruiter sitting down and saying, right, anybody who I think is old, I'm getting rid of them. No, what they're doing is they're plugging into their ATS. Okay, anybody with less than 5 years experience, but more than 15, cut them. And then you get the Dear John email that says thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, immediately, right? With no feedback. And
Zero
feedback. Yeah. And that's the piece, really, isn't it? How does this play into LinkedIn then? So one of the questions I get with loads of people is, so my CV is one thing, my LinkedIn is another, and I work a lot with my executive clients to say, okay, so we've almost kind of got your CVs like this 2-dimensional version of yourself is the way I talk about it, and your LinkedIn is the 3D because you can get loads of testimonials, you can see what someone's doing, what they're saying on there. Sure. How does this dovetail together in this executive market, let's call it? How do you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of myths when it comes to what works on LinkedIn and what doesn't. And, sure. What I go by are 2 things. One, my network of recruiters, headhunters, and hiring managers. And 2, I've had the opportunity to speak with a few folks at LinkedIn who work on the algorithm and whatnot. And the 3 biggest things when it comes to putting out the right signal because that's what LinkedIn's for, is putting out the signal that this is who I am, this is who I want to attract, right? There's obviously other things you can do with it, but for at the executive level, that's my main focus. Can I get the signal right? And the signal, it's going to be three things. It's profile picture, about section, recommendation section. So profile picture, professional headshot. I don't want to see an AI generated photo. I don't want a bathroom selfie, none of that stuff.
No.
Professional headshots, the best 50 quid you can spend sometimes.
Absolutely. And so many people have just snapped themselves as well. One of the things I see all the time, people wear it like, oh, I've been at a conference, I'll take a selfie, and I'm wearing the lanyard of my old company. And I'm always like, no, you're yourself, you're you brand. It's not anything else at this point. It's quite interesting, actually, how people, I'm using AI pictures. I see far too much of that. And some of the banners in the background as well. So it definitely all makes a change, makes a difference, doesn't it? Massively. So worth spending 50 quid, as you say.
For sure. And then, the second part's going to be your about section, right? That's where you tell the story. You tell the narrative, right? And I always tell my executives, I need to know, who are you as a leader?
Yeah.
How do you put those leadership qualities into play, and what are the outcomes?
Yeah.
Right. And within that about section as well, I want to try to lace in keywords and phrases related to the types of roles, industries, companies that we want to attract to the profile, right? Because the algorithm, it weighs that part pretty substantially from what I understand. Regarding keyword search or Boolean searches, whatever a recruiter might be using. And the go-to thing right now for most folks is I'm going to go into ChatGPT or Claude or blah, 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 and get that to write it.
Let it do it.
What's that?
And just people like, it's going to let that do that for me.
And then they just copy paste over. And, you got to go through a few rounds of edits, because if you just go straight from AI into your profile, there's a pattern it's following, right? And it's not hard to spot it. And I know recruiters aren't the biggest fans of that. Now, nobody's going to trash you if you just use AI to write this stuff, but you need to put in your own flavor. You need to have that special sauce.
Well, it's the personality. And that's what I always say to people. I think when it comes to your about section, you can tell your story, but actually you can be strategic, right? You can use the keywords, but I always get my clients to think, what's the stuff, what do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? There's a big theme around the work I do around my reputation, internally, externally, and there's a huge part of that, obviously, in what we do. But I'll be saying to people, what are you most proud of?
Yeah.
What do you get out of bed for in the morning? What are you motivated by? What kind of gives you all of your energy? And when people start to tap into that and then start to tell a couple of stories from it, rather than it just being, hi, I am an executive CFO responsible for, I don't want a list of responsible for. I want to know what your impact is. And I want to know what you do, but how you do it. Because at senior levels, they are not just looking for a cookie cutter. Often they are looking for a personality. They're looking for a cultural fit, someone who can really drive forward. So you really want to bring a flavor of yourself to it. So I think that about section is something I work a lot with my clients. And it often starts with that reflective piece. Before we even hit the market, I talk a lot about readiness. People say, oh, I need to get ready. Well, I'll be ready to hit the market next week. And I'm like, whoa, we need to do some of the stopping. We need to sit and think, what am I saying? Who to? And why? And often that might even be moments for some of my clients where they'll say, oh, I've been doing that for 20 years, but I don't really like it. You haven't got to say it now, some of that stuff. So what things might I want to lean into, do more of, but also do less of? So I hear a lot of that when it comes to LinkedIn. And what I do know is that in a relatively short bit of time, your LinkedIn can be doing what it needs to do for you, but also really connect with your CV as a really powerful toolkit.
100%.
So that's what I see.
Well, like within your own clients, people you've worked with, what's one aspect maybe you've seen a pattern that they really struggle to translate? Like, I want to communicate this thing about myself, but I don't have the words, or I don't know how to do it.
So strengths. One of the things, so that classic interview question, Victoria, tell me your best strengths. That's bunny in headlights moments for lots and lots of executives and anyone really. But really, as you are moving through your career, you might be X couple of decades in now. we've done loads of stuff. We're good at loads of stuff. So I spend a lot of time with my clients kind of saying, okay, so if someone says, I'm really good at comms.
And then what? Yeah. What does that mean?
Is that like doing the action? Is that the strategic side of that? Is that the people side? Like, what is that? So I spend a lot of time breaking down what we think we know about our strengths and really thinking about what do I really want people to know about me? What would I like more of? Actually, how do I play to my best? Where do I make my very best contribution in an organization? That's all the stuff we want people to know about us. And also the stuff that maybe I've done loads of, but I find it quite draining. It's not really for me. I'm good at it, so I'm quite happy for it to be in my role.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be front and center. No thanks. Yeah. And then also thinking about, well, what are the things that could be a red flag that if I'm having a conversation, which obviously at an executive level, these are two-way streets. You know, if you're interviewing both ways.
100%.
You know, fundamentally, it might be that you have a conversation with someone and they say, oh, the role includes X, Y, and Z. And you think, I know that that's one of the things I don't really want. Really easily, you can be like, do you know what? Thank you, but this isn't for me. And I think that's one of the things that is really difficult when you're out in the market, is just saying yes to everything. Whereas sometimes, you know, with a little bit of time and rigor and preparation, you can be ready to have really strong conversations. So in a quick way, I spend a lot of time with people really thinking about what are the messages I want to put out there. And back to your point earlier, lots of these roles at this level are curated for the person. You could curate that perfectly in the ways that I've just talked to, or you could do it really badly and end up in a role you hate, or a role or a role that you actually don't get to shine and reach your potential in and perform. And at these levels, we can't risk that. So there's a lot around the strength side of things, the narrative. And fundamentally, when we've done loads of stuff, it's quite hard to boil that down into what I might class as, I call it kind of like the 5 buckets. What are my 5 buckets? So wherever I am, I know what my 5 buckets are. I know how I explain those things. And hey, I've got some great stories attached to that. So I can go out and I can talk to anyone, whether it's that really strategic conversation or my friends in the pub, I can talk to it in a really consistent way. So it's consistency of the messaging and distilling it down.
No, absolutely. I'm spot on there with you. And it's always refreshing to hear when people, you know, put the emphasis on, it's not just what you want, you got to get rid of what you don't want as well. I mean, you know, we can say
it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
Because equally in corporate life, we're so used to saying, yes, sure. Actually, you get to choose.
100%.
This is the next chapter of your career, and particularly if you're going into a very senior role, we have to make sure the environment for success is right for you in all the ways we've just talked about.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Right on. Well, before we go to the next round, just wanted to share with everybody who's been joining us, if you're hearing about the things that we're talking about and it's resonating with you, you know, we are offering a program, Victoria and I, called Executive Pathfinders. It's an 8-week, you know, pretty intensive process where we're going to make sure that from soup to nuts, everybody has what they need to navigate this process. So part of that is working directly with me to get the CV, LinkedIn messaging, you know, squared away, good to go. It's working directly with Victoria to, you know, again, get that messaging correct, understand who you are, what you bring to the table, how best to communicate that, and then the positioning as well, right? Making sure that you're the, you know, it's not just going to be a square peg in a round hole, so to speak. It's making sure that we're getting this role as ideal as it can be for this person. We're going to keep numbers low since it'll be our first cohort. So if anybody has any questions on that, you can go to the link in the comments that talks a little bit more about it. And then we're obviously happy to answer any questions during our conversation. Right on.
So, and actually, just while we're talking about that, I think it's worth everybody knowing, Ryan and I have been talking about this for years. Have we not been? I think, you know, we've been working together, what, 5.5 years now. We just, you know, really connected from the off. And whenever we caught up really at the start, it was like, oh, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. And actually, as I sit here today, I am so excited for this because this is going to be something that I don't really see out there, but we know is needed. So I'm really glad to be here, and it's the culmination of all of our thinking, which I think is really cool, actually.
100%, and I think what we both found as well, it's, you can do the lone wolf thing as a coach or as an applicant, as somebody navigating the market, or you do it with a team and you have a
Yeah.
group of people around you that you can commiserate with, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can use to expand your network. So that's kind of one of those fringe benefits as well.
Yeah, and I also think one of the things I say to lots of my clients is, who's in your corner?
Yeah.
Who have you got around you? And I'm quite happy to be known as somebody's secret weapon. I absolutely love that accolade, I have to say. Not many executives are out there making these leaps on their own. If they
Mm.
are, it's really difficult process, and absolute fair play to them. But most people have got, who are your coaches? Who are your mentors? Who are the experts around you that you're utilizing? And I think as part of the program, we'll be talking about network. It wouldn't be just us; it'd be lots of other people as well. But that is one of the things. You don't need to do this alone, and actually, more signs of success come from when you've got a team, a little tribe around you. That's for sure.
100%. No, absolutely. I like to think we're like for a boxer, we're the corner people, right? Giving
Yeah.
advice, cleaning up cuts, stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
and it's emotional though, isn't it? And we have the physical side of this, and it can be really, really tiring. But genuinely, I was working with a client earlier today who was like, "Oh, I didn't get this role," and we're like, right, okay, what do we need to do? How do we regroup? How do we work out what's going, the feedback? What do we learn from this? What do we move on with? What's our next kind of positive action? One of the things I pride myself is that, and loads of my clients will know this about me, no one gets to sulk for very long, because we are on to the next thing. We are being super positive all the time, and I think that's what comes from having a team around you, really.
yeah, absolutely. And this does give us a good segue into our next round, where we're going to talk about how senior roles actually get filled. And you had touched a bit on it about how organizations curate roles for people like they might have in mind, and the role gets built around the person sometimes, and the other way around. I mean, what's been your experience at? Because you've got a lot more of a background within inside the internal movement and corporate teams
Yeah.
than I do.
Yeah, so for those here, I've got a corporate. So I used to work inside organizations as like head of talent and in these sorts of roles. So succession, right? What are we doing internally? We're having conversations with our leaders, and we're understanding what our pipeline of talent is. And we talk in terms of readiness. So is somebody ready immediately, 12 months, 3 to 5 years, whatever that could look like. But actually what we do know is that a lot of this, I talk to my clients all the time about, do you know what is in your wallet? What are your invisible career assets that you have? So, it's that track record. Do the right people inside your organization know the right things about you? Humans are riddled with bias. They will remember the last thing you did, not that really cool project 4 or 5 years ago. So that's all part of the messaging. So I get people to think about, what relationships, what sponsors and allies do you have? Often I'll be saying to clients, so do you have a really good quality relationship strategically with the decision makers?
Yeah.
Oh, I might line into only one of the exco or something like that. I'm like, that's not good enough. We need to like curate these relationships, because what happens is, when we do that, roles might come up. And when you've got those really, really strong invisible career assets, so track record, people know what you do, they know how you do it, and you've got all those sponsors and allies, you're then more likely to be given a chance to have a go.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the first things I would say. But second of all, if they're thinking about a new role, they can be like, oh, okay, so we know that Victoria's been honest. She really wants to take a step up. We've been working on her development. We know she's on the succession pipeline planned. Then it's a case of, so if we're going to create this role, let's create it based on what we know for her. And they will often include you in the conversation as well. So
Yeah.
you get to curate it with them. So I think from an internal perspective, have you actually gone and spent time with the decision makers, with your heads of talent? Maybe in your organization, it might be a senior business partner, or it might be your head of people, whatever that might look like. Just telling your boss you want more is okay, but it's not enough. So you want to make sure and have honest conversations about succession. It's interesting. I think succession in lots of respects can be a little bit cloak and dagger. They can be a
Sure.
little bit hidden behind the scenes, because if we're promising people things and we're in dynamic organizations, and actually it's really hard to promise things to people in this current environment. Get that completely. But certainly you can go and be quite proactive with that conversation and say, hey, look, I'd like to do more. How do I kind of signal that? But one of the things you can do very organically, and I say organically and authentically, is focus on building relationships with the right people inside.
Yes.
A bit like the external piece, isn't it, Ryan? You know, you go and make best friends with a few recruiters, right? So from an internal perspective, you know, think about who your internal key stakeholders are. And often I will say to my clients, we need to create a strategic network map. And it might feel really luxurious and maybe a little bit like, awkward. But the frame that I always put that in is who can help you. So that's the thing from the internal perspective, is like the consistency of the messaging. And again, I come back to, we need to know what the messaging is first.
Right.
Then who am I telling? And what are the structures within the organization that I need to know about?
Yes.
And the timelines and all of those sorts of things, because actually that all really matters. Ryan, tell us a little bit about then recruiter relationships and how jobs actually get filled.
Well, I mean, before I jump into that, I had a question for you, because I mean, like, you know, I get, you know, some folks who are a bit more introverted, or maybe they're, you know, neurospicy or whatnot, and maybe have reservations about starting those conversations. I mean, how do you work with somebody to get them to have the courage to have those conversations with decision makers, or maybe like how to take that first step to start getting on people's radar?
Yeah, and I think that there can be a real psychological blocker. You know, you can make yourself feel very vulnerable, whether or not you're, you know, introverted. It can feel like you're shining a light on yourself. So I think there is definitely a level of appropriateness. Sometimes you'll be led by your organization, right? There might be a cultural fit that says, no, we speak up, or like, actually, we're more conservative and political. You know, we think about all of those things. The key thing for me is this: you can be completely authentic in talking about yourself when you've done the thinking about it. So that question, Victoria, tell me your best strengths. The reason that all of our toes curl is because if I sit there and say, oh, well, actually, I'm an amazing people person, somebody can go, I've heard you're not. And that's what makes us all freak out. However, if I go in and say, do you know what, the things that I love doing are, I love connecting with human beings. And actually, I love being the person who can come in. And so do you see how, like, just a little change in language? And you saw my behavior changed and everything because it's authentic. So I think I come back to this point of, how do I play at my best? What do I enjoy doing the most? What really gives me the energy to get up every day? Because once you know those things, it becomes really authentic to talk about it, and it doesn't feel really pressurized. And then when you layer on okay, who do I want to talk to? So again, I was working with a senior client yesterday in banking who finds themselves wanting to move. And this is a C-suite level. You know, we had a similar conversation because this person has done so many different things, and they wanted to be authentic, but they're also wanting to change the way that they work. So they want to drop down to 3 days a week, which is kind of unusual, right, at these levels in banking particularly.
Sure.
So we spent some time really thinking about, how do you talk authentically about this stuff so that actually they can see the value you bring rather than the presenteeism inside.
100%.
And it's about like valuing different people's personalities. It's not just what you do, it's how you do it. Has that answered your question?
It does. And, you know, especially too, it's like not trying to make this big giant shift in your personality or approach. It's little things that make a big difference. And, you know, you ask me, it's like, okay, how am I seeing these roles get filled? One of my favorite examples is a gentleman I worked with. He's in the States, healthcare executive, and he had all these amazing stories about just different things that he's done throughout his career. And then he could always tell me what he learned from it and how he applied that to other organizations. So as part of our strategy for him, you know, because he was targeting roles that were 300-400 grand, and you're not going to find too many of those on LinkedIn and whatnot. It's just
No.
not the place where those jobs are going to live, regardless of whether it's in the US, in the UK, all that kind of stuff. So we started finding a framework. We developed like a structure for him to tell these stories in little 200 to 250 word posts on LinkedIn.
Nice.
And it wasn't about posting every day, right? It wasn't about, throwing this stuff out there left and right. It was, okay, one story a week. And what we found was one of those stories that we told, I think it was about digital transformation in the healthcare industry, specifically. The organization he's now at was having that exact same problem. And the recruiter headhunter came across his post because posting regularly on LinkedIn, again, once a week for 8 to 12 weeks, something tends to click in the algorithm that now just boosts you up to people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. And this was, again, just a random message in his inbox. Hey, we actually have my clients having a similar issue. We'd love to talk to you about this role. 4 months later, he's in a seat and he's happy as can be. So there really is that that return on investment. Like I going back to what I said before, people's default setting is apply. I got to do something. I'm going to go apply for jobs.
Yeah.
Pause. Instead of going to do that and just wasting a bunch of time and getting a bunch of rejections, sit down. Even if you have to work with AI to help build this stuff out, talk about your stories, because two things happen. One, now you've got some great content to throw on LinkedIn, which can help with visibility, help with that signal, right? But also, two, now you've got your cornerstones for your interview stories.
Yes.
Right? The things that you're going to want to talk about when your butt's in the hot seat and you got to answer questions with a stranger. And instead of just
hooks, I talk about the hooks for interview questions. So people will go, I want to know more about that. So I think that's absolutely valid. And actually, Ryan, Laura, thank you, Laura, for your comment, has just posted, hey, Ryan and Victoria, apologies if you already covered this. What do you recommend for your execs that are regularly sharing their perspective and thought leadership on LinkedIn or other platforms, but the content isn't landing? How do you help them take that leap? Do you want to go first?
So, I mean, it's two things for me. One, people always think that, I'm going to be posting on LinkedIn. It's going to paint me in a light. Everybody's so focused on themselves that very rarely are they going to look at that and be like, ugh, like, it's more about, again, not bragging about yourself or standing at the mountaintop shouting how awesome you are. It's about sharing knowledge, sharing stories. And for me, that's what plays best on LinkedIn. And when it comes to, finding a way to make it work when maybe the content isn't landing, it's a little bit of A/B testing, right? I mean, if you look at any of the most, well-known streamers or influencers or voices in our space or any other spaces, you look at their first few posts, video, stuff like that, it's probably rubbish. Wasn't that great? But you know what? They kept at it and they found that rhythm. They found that way to convey the messaging that not only resonated with the audience, but it worked for them as well. Yeah. That's kind of been my approach to it. I'd be curious to hear about yours.
Yeah, so I get, so my clients might be saying, oh, it's not landing. And I'll be like, well, how do you know? So first of all, how do you use the analytics side of LinkedIn? Like, how do you know, where's it going? Just kind of do some mining on what's really going on. But you touched upon it earlier on. It's like, who are you talking to? And what are you saying? What's the gift here? What's the problem that you're seeking to address? Do you just need to change writing style? Or actually, is this a need to share a little bit more about a certain problem? And particularly if you're looking for another role and you're in a certain area and you've done your research. So it might be something that, it depends. I've got some clients who just love LinkedIn and they go where the energy is and they just like hammer it out and they love doing that.
Yes.
And then I've got others who are really, really organized about it. So I think there's something about what's actually happening already. Actually, who do you want to talk to? Where are they? What are their problems? What might the algorithm do for you? I recently had a client who is a CEO of a very, very large organization, making a move into another CEO role. And one of the things that is in a really technical area. And he went and wrote an 8-piece article series because actually he was like, I'm really interested in this and I want other people to be interested and it keeps me relevant while I'm, kind of doing other things between these two roles. And he took the time to do that. And it was really, really interesting because he got so many people saying, are you sure? Could we talk to you? Because he kind of created this beautiful series that he pinned at the top of his LinkedIn. And actually, that was a great way of talking about his leadership. And that will long last.
Yes.
It's not just a thing while you're looking for a job. So I think there's a whole raft of things I would talk about. But I also talk about going where the energy is, right? What are you most interested in?
Mm.
And also, don't be afraid. Ryan, you and I have talked about this. From time to time, it's okay to show people that you're human. Sure, if you look at either of our LinkedIn, yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about how do I want to talk about the stuff I'm
Yeah.
doing for clients. But every now and again, there'll be a picture of my kids or my cats on there or something. And I know what gets the hits. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
it's showing that you're human within all of this as well, and also being really careful that it's not just AI generated. That's the other thing I would say.
It's authenticity, right? It comes down to, it's like, you're not just a candidate, you are a person. And at the end of the day, if I'm hiring you,
Yeah.
we're going to be working alongside one another. Like, are we going to get along? Are you going to fit in with our culture? Are we going to be able to collaborate well? We don't have to be best friends, but we still want to be in alignment. So no, I'm right there behind you, and just sharing those bits of humanity. I mean, I know with my own, it's a bit different for, like an executive as opposed to, career professional like you and I, but I share very human stories on my LinkedIn About section where it's like, yeah, I did stand-up comedy on a cruise ship and I bombed hard. I mean,
I love
miserably. It's like the worst. I've got my face punched inside a cage fighting as an MMA fighter. I've, all this kind of stuff. So people like knowing that it's like, oh, you're not just what AI spit out about who you are, what you bring to the table. It's, you're a human being and you love your pets and you enjoy doing this. And on top of that, here's a lot of value.
Yeah, and the
that
other
you're gonna-
thing I was thinking about it earlier on when you were talking is when people say, "Oh, do I need to change who I am, or should I do this?" I'm always saying, "You have been highly successful until this point. Don't change, but we might need to just change the lighting, might need to change
Yeah.
according to where you want to go next, because it's
Mhm.
about you're being presented with quite a lot of choice. Actually, you get to choose
Yeah.
what you're going for, who you want to talk to, what you want to say about yourself. But I really do want people to almost like not self-select themselves out early doors when actually you've been highly successful to this point. And a lot of that is by being human. How do
100%.
you do things, not just what you do, is one of the things. I'm conscious of our time, Ryan. So I just wanted to pick up this point around what makes, what should people do with external recruiters? People say, should I be talking to them all the time? Should I have tons of recruiter friends? I mean, I know I've got a view on this, but when do they actually step in to help you? How are these roles actually filled?
It's a good question. And a lot of it's going to depend on the individual. Like, I know some recruiters, executive headhunters who are brilliant professionals. They are very prompt with communication. They don't ghost people. They always try to share as much feedback as they can. That's what you tend to see at, kind of the higher end of the food chain. Whereas there's obviously the opposite to that. Some recruiters, it's just a volume game. And, they might be trying to push you as a candidate for a role that maybe they know you're going to get, but not necessarily be suited for, or be that's not what maybe the individual is looking for, because, let's be real, they're getting bonused if you stay there for 90 days or whatever it is, and might be 10, could be 30% of the salary. So for me, it starts, and it goes back to what you said before about relationships, right? Building an authentic relationship with somebody. If a recruiter just messages you on LinkedIn and is like, hey, send me your CV, I've got these roles, I'll throw them out there for you. It's like, you're not really, there's not a lot about me as a candidate, and we haven't even spoken yet. So what I always tell people is it should be a relationship. It should be a collaboration.
Yeah.
Right. And the best ones I know, like I know one guy in life sciences who's an absolute gem. I've got one who's in more of the HR space. They take the time to look under the hood and see, all right, what makes this person tick? Where are they going to be at their best? Then they make the, connections there.
I totally agree. It's this human piece, isn't it? So I've got a great guy who's in tech, and a recruiter, a headhunter at really senior levels. And he talks to me and we joke about it. He's like, I want to meet people for a sandwich lunch. And I'm always like, Is it always got to be a sandwich? And we joke about it. He's like, I will take the time to meet people because I'm going to be putting, to a certain extent, he's like, I'm putting my reputation on the line when I put candidates forward to these really senior roles in my clients. So I talk about, really take the time. What can you gift a recruiter? It might actually be that you've got some knowledge you can share with them. And this I think comes back to a key point. I know, Ryan, we've talked about this before. People don't, particularly when you're going for like maybe your next role and it is a C-suite role, you don't just decide you're doing it one day and then start. It is a 18 to 12, 12 to 18 month process, isn't it? And within all of that, of course, is like building these human connections and making friends,
Yes.
and sharing this stuff and sharing knowledge and having a few sandwiches, maybe all of that stuff. So I think this human side of who you are is a key part of what I work on. But a lot of the time, I think people work with recruiters in quite a transactional way,
Yes.
and they don't like, the good ones don't like that.
No. Again, it goes back to I want to be a team.
Yeah.
Right. We got to make sure this is the right fit for both parties.
Sure.
Right. Because they're that person in the middle of it. And one last thing I'll say on it as well. And I love your story about the sandwiches, like because it's just what I've found, especially at the more executive levels, is there really is this kind of swing back to the quote unquote good old days of, hey, I want to bump into somebody at a conference or a workshop or a roundtable or an expo or whatever, a place where you're going to be rubbing shoulders with people who are in your world, and go start up a conversation with a stranger. Ask them what have they been working on. People love it when you ask them questions about their job. Right?
Absolutely.
It's a great icebreaker. And what people are tending to find, at least some, a lot of folks I've been working with, it's like, hey, if I can get to these in-person events, go mingle a little bit, I can talk myself into an opportunity.
Yeah, and most people do, right? And then they're just like, oh, I bumped into somebody and this happened. I absolutely think one of the things I will talk to my clients about, when you've got your messaging and you've got your foundations of the house, you start to put the walls up. And the walls include, where do I need to be?
Yeah.
And it might be that you need to trek into the city and go to an event or a conference. It might be that you need to join a small roundtable group that meets on a Monday morning for breakfast. I don't know. There are heaps of different places. Now, the other challenge can be you could be in too many places, but it's about really distilling down who will be there, what do I want from that? And actually, again, that focus allows people to think about the 70-20-10 and really be very smart about how they use their time to be ready or to look for a role. But certainly, I think going back to the, I think COVID did this to us. So I think we started to say, I want human connection again, please. So the ability, I say this all the time to people, you probably can just say to someone, do you want to have a virtual coffee? And people want human contact, and they'll be like, yeah, sure. It might not be tomorrow.
Yeah.
But people really rarely say no thanks. And I do think I saw quite a change in that when it came from, I think, COVID. People wanted humans again.
I agree. And they're really, because that's another part of it as well. Like, it's not so much on the executive side of things. I've seen it a little bit. But the first round of interview is with an AI agent.
Yeah.
Or a chatbot. That's a thing now. And, that's a whole nother level of having to prepare and deal with a different side of the game. But the overwhelming feedback I've heard from the people I work with is they hate it.
Yes.
They hate it. It's so impersonal, right? And they're nervous. They feel like they're reading off a hostage note when they're speaking to these things. And it's not a good experience. And for me, candidate experience is an important part of the equation. Yeah. How is this company looking after you now before we've even done business together?
Yeah, right? I absolutely agree with you. I'm working with some clients at the moment who are hiring some very senior strategic people, and actually their pool is actually pretty much outside the UK. How they treat these people, where they take them to for dinner, actually how they show what it's like to work here and the cultural fit and just all of that stuff, that candidate experience. I see it at both ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
Sometimes it's absolutely shocking, and then sometimes they absolutely get it on the nose. So I think it's a really important part of all of this. I agree.
No, absolutely. Well, let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left. So one of the things I was looking to talk to you about as well is, questions people should be asking themselves before they go into this whole process. And, you know, for me, it's, you know, if I were to get this job tomorrow, how would that change my life? For the
Yeah.
better, the worse, stay the same? Because, you know, people forget that when you do leave a job, you have to mourn it. There takes some time. You
Yeah.
know, we have our brain processes leaving a job the same way that we lose a pet or a friend or family member, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I think so. I think there's a few things in my mind. I think when people at senior levels leave organizations through restructures or change, which happens quite a lot,
sure.
there's absolutely this part of the emotional change curve that you need to go through. And that's where I'll always say we sit with it. We don't let it sit for too long, but we acknowledge it, right? And then we think about, okay, so what have I learned from this? And we regroup and we get on that train again.
Yeah.
There are other questions though that I do ask my clients, and it's things around, what do I want here? Do I want to just get another job for 2 years, or depending on, my client and what they want, we might, someone said to me last week, Victoria, I've got one really good job left in me before I retire. So like, are you playing the long game? We talked about the game and the rules of the game. Well, what's the game? It's your game. You get to choose in some respects. So
Yeah.
there's a lot about that. Stop, reflect, and then regroup, and then all the messaging and all that stuff comes from it. But then the other questions really are around, who's in my corner? How do I get myself ready to go and enter the market? So there's quite a lot of questions that are self-reflective, really.
Yeah.
A lot of people just react to the pressure. Right, well, I'm going to go from one thing to the next and not necessarily think about the why. So those are some of the things. And I also encourage people to go and talk to their mentors. Consider what might your advice be for a peer if someone came and said this to you? Because again, we're not great at giving, taking our own advice, are we? So there's quite a few things like that for me that help people be extremely strategic with what comes next. Because if we go knee-jerk reaction, actually we kind of set ourselves up not to succeed.
100%.
And I see that a lot, actually. And that's where I think people say, oh, Victoria, working with you, it helps me kind of be really anchored. It helps me stop and think and not just do the usual kind of like quick moving stuff.
No, and you're spot on. I mean, the self-reflection part, I mean, everybody's done it at some point in their career. They may have done it once and feel like they don't need to do it again, but our lives change. Like, are you married? Are you single? Are you starting a family? Like, how do these things impact? And biggest thing I try to communicate with executives I work with is, what's your North Star?
Yeah, I love that.
Right? What are you working towards? Is it a certain lifestyle? Is it a certain salary band? Is it you want to hit a certain level in your career? Like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right. But having that idea about, okay, that's the direction I need to go in. Now we can build around a strategy. Like you said, it's not something knee jerk. I mean, you think about it in business as well. Very few, I think, good business decisions are made when it's just like firing from the hip, just no thought, just jumping right into it. Whereas especially at the executive level, I mean, these are long, life cycles. I mean, for most folks I work with, I don't know about it is for you, but it's like 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
From time you hand in the app to day one on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something really interesting about like the North Star. So the question I will always ask people is, so if you are a year into this role and it's absolutely doing everything it needs for you personally and professionally, what does it look like around here? And I love that. So in coaching terms, it's appreciative inquiry. It gets people to think forward and imagine themselves in an ecosystem. And I talk about ecosystems a lot, and how fragile they are, actually, particularly the home ones. Actually, what does it look and feel like around here? And then can work out what the key things are, this kind of environment for success as well. So I love the idea of that North Star, golden thread, all of those things as well. But yeah, it's really important.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to know where you're going, before you start the journey. And you can do it without planning these things out. But, it's like going on a road trip without any sat nav. Like, you're going to take wrong turns. You're going to, be like, oh, you probably wouldn't know the American Office, but like Michael Scott, drive it straight into a lake because he's following, you know, what he thinks is the right or whatever. The point is that I guess having that clear idea about, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to be, it's critical, right? And it's such an underlooked part of the process, I think.
Yeah, particularly at really senior levels where people might be actually thinking about retirement.
Yeah.
You know, they've got that game plan. We talk about the game, rules of the game. They might be changing a bit. So, okay, what do we need to do? But there's also a lot for me with my really senior clients about legacy.
Yeah.
Actually, what am I doing this for? Why? What's my knowledge? What do I want to leave? You know, like some of that stuff. Like, so my contribution isn't just for now.
Yeah.
It's for the future as well. So that's a really deep part of some of these really senior hires that's critical to get down before you then hit the market and start talking to people. Because actually, if you just jump straight into the market and you haven't really thought about, you know, who am I? What do I want to do? Then actually you're just having the wrong conversation, and which can actually be quite harmful to your reputation as well. So I think there's that mitigation that just has to happen. There's quite a lot of risk involved, right? So we've got to do it properly.
100%. Absolutely. You know, and one of the things that, you know, we're obviously excited to work on together is, you know, our Executive Pathfinders program, where it's, you know, not just, all right, we're going to give you a new CV, you'll learn a few things from Victoria, and then it's off to the races. It's no, you will leave this process with a clear roadmap, a clear understanding of, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is where I can deliver value. This is who I can attract. Right. And have that confidence as well to go in and start those conversations, knowing that, okay, these are the little steps I'm taking to get there.
Yeah, I think the reason we created this 8-week program is because then in a relatively short period of time, your readiness is at 100%. And you'll have thought about all these little things. But the key thing about this is that it is really bespoke to you. So it's not just off the shelf. We're just going to, you know, do that. This is the kind of the sheep dip. That is not what this is about. But it's about you being really authentically you when you come out of this, because you have a strategy behind it. You've got your own strategy. You know what you're doing. You know why. And that's one of the key drivers here that we think a lot of people are missing, isn't it? Right. And that's why we're here. So
that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I appreciate everybody who's joined us today. We've had, you know, some people stick with us the whole hour and a few folks drop in and out. So, you know, always appreciative of everybody joining us. And and if anybody's got any questions, you can reach out to either myself or Victoria. There's a link in the comments to our landing page where you can express your interest if you'd like to work with us together. I'm sure we'll do more of these in the future, but yeah, Victoria, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. I love our conversations, and I'm pleased we've been able to do this on a grander stage. So thank you.
And we figured out how to get it on LinkedIn Live without things crashing or something like that. We'll take it, you know.
Look at that. What a journey it's been. Voyage of discovery for everyone involved today. So yeah, it's really cool.
Right on. Well, thank you for your time today. Thank you for everybody joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.